When is the first time you actually met President Bush? I know you just briefly mentioned when you first started working for him. And what was your first impression?
My wife reminds me that we met George W. Bush in 1988 when he came to Houston. I grew up in Houston, practiced law in Houston for 13 years before going into public service. He apparently came to Houston as a surrogate speaker for his father, who was running for president. And Becky reminds me that the story is we were introduced to George W. Bush, and she said, "We really love your mother." And he said, "Well, you know, so do I," and she is Dad's secret weapon. My first memory of meeting George W. Bush was about a year before he ran against Governor Richards in Texas. And he wanted to come to Houston. He wanted to meet with some minority leaders in Houston, community leaders, and so I set something up at my law firm. And I remember we spent about an hour and a half together talking about various issues, and I was very, very impressed with him. But I really thought he had no chance of beating Ann Richards. I really did, because she was extremely popular. And what I came away with from that meeting was he was very disciplined. I mean, he had points that he wanted to make, very focused. He was also very, very likable. I think anyone who spends any time with George W. Bush comes away thinking, whether you believe in his policies or not, he's a very likable person. I always say that he really has his mother's personality. There's a streak to him that is sort of irreverent at times, and people don't really get to see that. But when you work with someone day in and day out, particularly when you're that person's lawyer, you really get to know someone. You get to know the client. You get to know how that client makes decisions. You get to know, you get to see that client in victory. But more importantly, you get to see how that person reacts, when things don't go so well. And so we developed a good relationship.